Jiro is a middle-aged assassin skilled in the art of poison, but he has one major problem. All his friends have gotten married, while he still can't even get himself a girlfriend, so he needs to do something to fix that before he ends up dying alone. On one of Jiro's missions, he is there to take out a Yakuza president, and the president in question is currently speedrunning lung cancer while sitting on several nearly naked men as furniture, which seems pretty gay if you ask me. This is a celebration to commemorate their group's most recent success, so the president orders wine for everyone there. But first, to make sure it isn't poisoned, he orders his most trusted poison taster to try the wine. The taster takes a swig, and after confirming that the wine has no negative effects, the president takes a sip. However, moments later, the president spits out a mouthful of blood because the wine was indeed poisoned, and the one responsible for it was Jiro. He had slipped the poison into the president's wine while disguised as a waiter, and his job was done. He slipped out into the crowd as though nothing had happened. This is all in a day's work for him, but on the way back, he notices a pretty girl flirting with a dude in a car, and he's honestly a little jealous. So much so that he gets distracted and walks right into a lamp pole. A little while later, he finally returns to base, and there, he debriefs his sister on how the mission went. She is glad to hear that it was a success, but she can't help but wonder how he managed to slip that poison into the president's glass without the poison taster finding it. He explains that he didn't slip it past the taster at all, he just thought ahead and made the taster immune to that particular poison. Over the past 3 months, he had been adding tiny amounts of the poison to the taster's food since he was a lot easier to get to than the boss. Once his body had built up sufficient resistance to the toxin, he wouldn't be able to tell if the wine was poisoned or not, giving the president the go-ahead to drink the tainted wine. His sister is impressed that he could think of such an ingenious plan, but she's surprised he went through with it since it sounds like it was a massive pain in the butt. He agrees that it was annoying to have to do, but it was the best option because no one would expect an assassin to pull off such a convoluted scheme. His sister is glad he managed to come out of it all in one piece, but she actually has something else she wanted to discuss, so she asks Jiro if he has put any thought into getting married yet. Jiro spits up his snack when he hears her mention marriage because it's a bit of a sore topic for him. After all, there's no way someone like him could ever hold down a normal relationship, especially not in his line of work. His sister asks him to reconsider, but Jiro says there's nothing to think about because their grandma already wants to make one of them the new head of the Poison Clan, and when he tried to turn her down because he's single, his grandma matched him up with a total stranger from a branch family and nearly forced him to get married right then. He was able to get out of it, but that's why he isn't in a rush to get married anytime soon, and he is perfectly content with the lineage of the Poison Clan ending with him as the last Poison Master. Later that night, Jiro goes out to meet with one of his old friends, the Bug Master, and the two sit down to have a drink together. The Bug Master mentions that he heard that the Needle Master has 3 kids now, and Jiro is happy for the Needle Master, but he's never going to be able to share that experience since he's going to spend the rest of his life single, but at least he's still got the Bug Master with him so they can be single together. However, the Bug Master actually has something he has been meaning to tell Jiro. He informs Jiro that he is actually thinking of getting married soon, and hearing that catches Jiro off guard. The Bug Master then goes on to explain that he recently met a nice girl, and she accepts him for who he is, so he really feels like he could spend the rest of his life with her. Jiro can't believe the guy whose specialty is bugs managed to get a nice partner before him, but all the same, he's happy for his friend and congratulates him. The Bug Master assures Jiro that him getting married isn't going to change the fact that they are best friends, and Jiro is glad to hear that. But he'd be lying if he said he wasn't at least a little jealous because he can't even begin to imagine himself finding the perfect wife. Later on, Jiro is invited to Gold's base because he would like to ask him for a favor. Jiro's motto is that he offers cleaning services for a reasonable price, but only if the target is evil, which is why Gold has brought him there today. As a bonus, he offers to let Garo have some fun with his secretaries before he gets to work, but Garo turns him down because there's no way he could do something like that. He says he just wants to get this over with as soon as possible, so Gold goes ahead and introduces Jiro to the target, Mei Kinosaki, a marriage con artist who has been swindling Gold's men out of their hard-earned money by tricking them into falling in love with her. That's enough to meet Jiro's criteria, so he gets to work and injects her with a nerve toxin. He then tells her that over the next few minutes, every nerve in her body is going to feel like it's being torn apart piece by piece, and she's going to be conscious for every minute of that torture. Mei doesn't react to Jiro's statement, and instead nervously tells him that he reminds her of her first love, but Jiro can tell that she's just trying to worm her way out of this by flirting with him, just like she did with the others. Mei admits that she scammed people, but she says she had a really good reason for it because she was trying to earn enough money to pay for her sick brother's hospital bills but she admits that what she did was still wrong. She's just glad that she gets to spend her last moment looking at a face similar to someone she loves. The poison is really starting to take its toll on Mei's body, and it's pretty clear that everything she said was just an attempt to pull at Jiro's heartstrings. But if you're wondering if he's really gullible enough to fall for someone who is literally confirmed to be a love con artist, yes he is. Just then, Jiro receives a call from his sister, and she apologizes for calling him when he's in the middle of work, but she has to move back to the main family branch, so she wanted to let him know before she leaves. This comes as a shock to Jiro, so he asks her what's going on, and his sister explains that their grandma is really serious about wanting an heir, and since Jiro doesn't have a wife and they couldn't convince him to accept the arranged marriage, his sister has to do it instead. Jiro tries to tell her she doesn't have to do this, but his sister doesn't have what it takes to escape the main family, and she knows that if she refuses, then they will likely take away her freedom to use her as a baby-making machine. And if that's the alternative, then she'd rather just submit to their grandma's will and go along with it. Jiro asks Akari what she's going to do about her girlfriend, and she says she has no choice but to break up with her. Jiro tells her not to do it, but she yells back that this is the only way because she doesn't want Jiro to have to sacrifice himself in her place. It's true that Jiro doesn't want to have an arranged marriage, but he doesn't want his sister to have to go through that either, so he comes up with an idea. He walks up to Mei and tells her that if she wants to live, then she has to agree to marry him. At least this way, he'd be choosing someone who he's already attracted to, so he asks her if she's on board. Hearing that, Mei smiles at him with relief, and then she says hell no. Jiro really wasn't expecting that after what Mei said earlier, but she was just trying to get under his skin a little as payback before she dies. After all, why would she want to get married to someone who thinks it's appropriate to propose to someone he was about to kill a moment ago? Jiro realizes that she's right, because he wouldn't agree to a deal like that either, and Mei goes on to say that if he's really serious about finding a wife, then he needs to be honest with himself about how he feels, otherwise, he'll never find anyone. Just then, Gold calls Garo over the comms system and asks him if he can hurry this up a little because he wants to see him kill Mei already. However, Garo is deep in thought right now. He has a rule of only killing evil people who deserve to die, not because he cares about justice or anything, but rather to make it easier for him to sleep at night. That said, he still kills people for a living, and he has been telling himself that he deserves to be alone for the rest of his life. But even someone like him thinks about falling in love and living a happy life sometimes. It's all he has been thinking about lately, but he knows he'll never meet someone like that because he's got no social skills. He never went to regular school, never made friends, and as a poison master, he barely ever meets new people unless they are assassins just like him. Mei tells him that he just needs to put himself out there and meet all sorts of people, because eventually, someone is bound to like him, though it will probably take a lot of effort on his part. But that aside, she tells him to hurry up and kill her. After all, she deserves it after what she caused her brother to go through. Just then, Gold and his crew show up in the chamber, and he tells Jiro to get on with it because he has already gotten more than enough dating advice from Mei. However, Jiro flatly says no because he needs Mei alive. He's not going to ask her to marry him, but he believes that only someone with matchmaking skills like her would be able to help him find a partner, so he offers to hire her to help him find a wife. Mei wasn't expecting Jiro to say that, and this is by far the strangest job she has ever been offered, but she's happy to agree to it. Just then, Gold and his crew all raise their guns, and Gold tells Jiro that he's not going to make it out of here after betraying him like this. Jiro doesn't count this as a betrayal, because his rule is that he only kills human scum, and Mei doesn't seem bad enough to deserve death. But Gold, on the other hand, is a different story. His organization makes money by taking jobs from ordinary people and then using the information gathered on those people to blackmail them and extort money. There's no telling how many lives his business has ruined, and that sounds pretty scummy to him, so it looks like he's got a new target. Jiro takes his syringe out and injects himself with a special poison, and as the group fires their guns at him, he vanishes right before their eyes along with Mei, before reappearing above them on the ceiling with a few vials of poison in hand. A few moments later, Jiro injects Mei with the antidote for the poison he gave her earlier, while all the gang members are either unconscious or convulsing, but despite how it looks, they aren't going to die. He just used his 300-year torment poison, so they'll experience unimaginable pain for a while, but it'll wear off eventually. In the meantime, he calls his sister and tells her that she doesn't have to go along with their grandma's demands. She tries to argue with him because she has already made her decision, but he cuts her off and explains that he just came to realize that having a genuine relationship is one of the greatest miracles out there, and he doesn't want her to ruin her life for his sake, so he promises that he will get married and succeed the Poison Clan in her place. After that, Jiro prepares to carry Mei home so she can start giving him proper dating advice, but he's not sure how to handle carrying her back because he's never had to touch a girl unless it was part of his job before. To that, Mei tells him there's no need to worry because she's actually a guy, and Jiro can't believe what he just heard. Mei has been a guy all along, and the only reason he was dressed as a girl is because his last con target was a man, so he needed to make it work somehow. Though he usually goes after female scam targets, so this was a rare occasion. That aside, he wants to get right to work helping Jiro, so he signs him up for a matchmaking event later that day, and he has a foolproof plan to help Jiro make some progress. Mei goes to the event dressed as a girl and charms all the men present to reduce Jiro's competition, and while he's doing that, it'll be up to Jiro to make his move. Jiro sits down across from one of the ladies at the event, and after she introduces herself, Jiro prepares to play his trump card. He tells her he makes over 100 million a year. That didn't go very well for him since the girl ignored him after that, and Mei yells at him, asking why he'd do something so crass. But Jiro really thought it was going to work. He read on a blog that women like men who make a lot of money, but while that may be true to some extent, Mei tells him he shouldn't be starting conversations like that because it makes him seem like a total jerk. He advises Jiro to at least look into the girl's eyes and smile before saying anything, and Jiro takes the advice to heart, but unfortunately, he looks really creepy when he smiles. The matchmaking event was a total bust, but Mei tells Jiro not to give up yet because the next plan is to use dating apps. Later that day, Mei manages to get a match for Jiro, and the date is at a local coffee shop. But Jiro is having a hard time because the girl ordered desserts for both of them. And all his Poison Master training makes it really difficult for him to eat something that he didn't make himself. And as you'd expect, the girl got weirded out by his behavior and left midway through the date. After a few more failed attempts, Mei says goodbye to Jiro for today and tells him they'll meet back up tomorrow to continue. However, just as she turns the corner, a car comes speeding down the street, and a man leans out and grabs Mei. The man is the older brother of Gold, and he demands to know what Mei did to him. Because before, Gold always used to talk about conquering the criminal underworld, but now he says he wants to just move back to his hometown and start a quiet cleaning company because crime isn't worth it. He knows Mei must have had something to do with it, so he's going to torture him until he finds out what happened. However, just then, the group notices a man standing in the middle of the street ahead of them, and it's Jiro. They try to run him over, but Jiro leaps over the car, and at the same time, he pours a highly corrosive cleaning agent he made down the middle of the car, splitting it in two. He then runs up to it from behind. And just before the car goes over the bridge, he grabs Mei and jumps away to safety. And as for Gold's brother, after what just happened, the only thought going through his mind is, you know what, maybe being a criminal isn't worth it after all. The next day, Kinosaki tells Jiro to meet him at an art gallery, and he doesn't understand why at first, but Kinosaki explains that even if he were to get a date with a girl, he'd mess it up in no time, so this is a practice date so that he can work on his mannerisms. As the day goes on, Jiro and Kinosaki go around the gallery together, and Kinosaki is acting natural, but Jiro is really stiff with his responses, so Kinosaki tells him to just loosen up a little because this isn't an interview. However, Jiro doesn't know how to loosen up, so he runs off and starts searching through the internet for pickup lines, but Kinosaki tells him he should just speak normally, which is a lot easier said than done for him. While they continue walking through the gallery, Jiro eventually notices a DIY candy kit on display, and this isn't just any candy kit either, this is the first one that was ever made 40 years ago. Jiro is really into candy kits, and even though this one is a collector's item that could easily cost 30 million, he'd be willing to pay 5 times that to get his hands on it. Kinosaki can't believe a candy kit could be so expensive, but seeing Jiro get excited about something is a nice change from his usual awkward self. And now that he has had a chance to break the tension by talking about something familiar to him, he's a lot more laid back and can actually make jokes about the art instead of awkwardly spouting pickup lines, so that's a step in the right direction. Jiro is grateful that Kinosaki is giving him a date rehearsal, but he's still not sure how a guy like him is supposed to find his charm, but just as he says this, Kinosaki points his attention toward a guy sitting on the first floor of the gallery. At first glance, the dude looks like an absolute weirdo, crouched down by an exhibit and muttering to himself, but he actually has a loving wife and adoring fans who flock to him the second they realize who he is. That's because he is one of the most famous artists of this generation, and the same rule applies to other talents, because people are inclined to like those who are skilled at something they enjoy or need. It may seem shallow to say you like someone for what they can do, but that is also part of your charm, the same as your looks or your personality, so he needs to take advantage of everything he has. Jiro understands what he's saying, but he doesn't think he has any talents that could be used as part of his charm. However, Kinosaki tells him that he does. After all, he was able to take out an entire room of bad guys all on his own with his poison master skills, and there's no way something as amazing as that won't be considered charming. Kinosaki asks him to lean in close and tells him all he needs to do is start helping people. But having someone whisper in his ear is a new experience, so Jiro is startled and jumps back in shock. Kinosaki goes on to explain that if he does stuff like protect high-profile clients and rescue hostages, preferably with ladies around to witness it, before he knows it, at least one person is going to fall for him. And it shouldn't be too hard for him since he already accepts pretty much any job out there as long as it's not outright evil. Jiro doesn't really think this is going to work because he's a poison master who assassinates people, but Kinosaki reminds him that there are no rules, stating that Jiro can't save people too. Even so, Jiro says it would feel like he was taking advantage of the girl if he acted like himself, just to get her to like him. But Kinosaki says it doesn't really matter how you meet someone, whether you bump into them naturally or stalk them for 3 months beforehand. As long as the two of you genuinely like each other, it will work out. Take Shiratori for example. He has a lot of young girls fawning over him because of his work, but he still chooses his wife above all else. So he grabs her hand and starts running out of the gallery to get away from the crowd. It's a touching display of how much they both care for each other. But Kinosaki was actually hoping to get an autograph from Shiratori as well, so he chases after him. Later that night at the cruise gallery, one of the paintings has been stolen, and this looks like the work of none other than the famous art thief, Himekawa. The guard is furious because the captain of the ship put a lot of effort into gathering these art pieces in many not-so-legal ways, and he won't stand for anyone stealing from the collection that he rightfully stole. They begin searching for any signs of a getaway boat nearby, but they haven't found anything on the radar, so they assume she must still be on the ship somewhere. However, Himekawa has already made her escape via a shark, and she's heading straight for land as they speak. Meanwhile, the captain is informed that one of his paintings has been stolen, but he doesn't seem too bothered by it because he thinks it's a small price to pay to finally get rid of an annoying pest. As Himekawa makes it to the shore, she's about to meet up with her team so they can all make their escape, but all of a sudden, the group gets engulfed by a vortex of water because the captain has already hired someone to take care of Himekawa. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Kinosaki reiterates the plan to get Jiro a girlfriend by having him save people, and Jiro understands most of it, but he has no idea how he's supposed to find rescue jobs when all he has ever done are assassinations. Kinosaki takes out his phone and shows him a website called DarkNav, and it's basically a dark web job site where all sorts of criminal and otherwise shady jobs are posted for anyone to accept. It should be really easy for Jiro to find a rescue job with this, and frankly, he's surprised that Jiro has never heard of it before since pretty much everyone in this line of work uses it nowadays. Jiro says all his jobs usually go through his family's broker, so he has never had to search like this before. Jiro takes a look at the job board, but he's not very impressed by what he sees since pretty much all the jobs there are either scam or smuggling related. But that's just because he's on Kinosaki's account right now, and deception is his area of expertise. After searching a little more, Jiro eventually comes across a post from the captain of the ship who has taken Himekawa hostage, and he is demanding that Himekawa's group hand over all the art they've stolen if they want to get her back unharmed. The criminal underworld knows Himekawa as a skilled art thief, but the truth is that she only targets malicious collectors who steal art from others, specifically so she can return it to its rightful owner. That's why Himekawa's crew is trying to hire someone to infiltrate the captain's base and rescue her, but unfortunately, it looks like Jiro and Kinosaki are the only ones who showed up. The group expected as much since they don't have enough money to offer a decent reward, and no rational assassin is going to accept such a risky job when the pay is so low. Fortunately for them, Jiro isn't in it for the money, so he agrees to take on the job. He introduces himself as a master of the Poison Clan, and as soon as the group hears that, they are terrified because they never expected to run into a poison master here. Normally, they'd have to sell all their organs just to cover the broker fee for someone as skilled as him, but if he's really willing to help them, then they aren't going to say no. However, before Jiro gets to work, he has a very important question, so he asks the group if Himekawa is single. Meanwhile, Himekawa is currently being held in the captain's private quarters, and the captain is talking about how beautiful he thinks she is, so he says he will spare her life if she agrees to become a part of his collection, but Himekawa flat out refuses. She came here to steal that painting back because the husband of the woman in the painting said it was the last thing he and his daughter had to remember his late wife by, so they were absolutely devastated when it was stolen. That's why Himekawa agreed to steal it back, and she refuses to give up until she has returned it to its rightful owners, but the captain has no intention of letting her do that, so he orders his mercenary to torture Himekawa until her resolve has been broken. Meanwhile, Jiro and Kinosaki are on their way to save Himekawa, and while they are running, Kinosaki tells Jiro that asking a question like that was really risky. It was fortunate that the guys just thought it was code for the mission, but if they knew he was just doing this to try and get Himekawa to fall for him, it would ruin the entire plan if she found out. Eventually, they arrive at the location where Himekawa's GPS says she should be, but the second Kinosaki gets to the top of the stairs, he gets 2 shotgun barrels pointed at him by the guards. Fortunately, before he can be shot, Jiro manages to take the guards out with a split kick, all while aura farming with his hands in his pockets. He then turns to ask Kinosaki if he's alright, and he says he's fine, but he's starting to think he should sit this one out because he's not much of a fighting type. However, Jiro says he needs Kinosaki to come with him because he has never met this girl before, and he's worried that he will screw it up if he's alone. Back in the captain's quarters, Himekawa has been getting waterboarded for the past 5 minutes, but the captain tells Ushio to stop for now because he just got word that there are 2 intruders nearby. So he wants Ushio to go deal with them, and while he's gone, the captain plans to try out some more creative torture methods on Himekawa. As Jiro and Kinosaki continue making their way to Himekawa, Kinosaki asks Jiro what he intends to say when he finally finds her, and while taking out a group of guards, Jiro responds with, "Hello, will you please marry me?" Kinosaki immediately tells him that's a terrible idea, because Himekawa is probably terrified right now, and the last thing she'd want to hear is the guy who saved her proposing on the spot. Meanwhile, back on Himekawa's end, the captain points a gun at her head, and she thinks he's about to shoot her, but it's actually worse than that, because he points his gun at the painting and threatens to shoot it if Himekawa doesn't submit to him. Himekawa made a promise to return that painting in one piece, and she can't do that if the captain destroys it, so she's about to relent and agree to do whatever the captain wants. But just then, his arm is blown clean off, and he then sees a burning figure come out of the painting and engulf his entire body in flames, but that part is just a hallucination caused by a dose of Jiro's poison, and the captain is going to be out for quite a while. Jiro walks up to Himekawa and recites his practiced line, introducing himself as the Poison Master and telling her that she's safe now because he came to rescue her. Himekawa is relieved that someone came to save her, but she knows her group doesn't have the kind of money necessary to hire a Poison Master, so she's worried that her friends might have sold their organs to pay for it. Meanwhile, Jiro is freaking out because while he may have made a good introduction, he didn't think of what he was going to say afterward, so he doesn't know what to do now. Kinosaki walks up and starts untying Himekawa before Jiro says anything to mess this up, but just then, Ushio grabs Himekawa and drags her away. Jiro can tell that Ushio is going to be a tough opponent for him to beat, so he injects himself and charges at her with a lethal dose of poison, but before he can make contact, Ushio gets away with his sudden blast of water. Jiro grabs Himekawa and tosses her over to Kinosaki so he can keep her safe in the meantime, while he goes to deal with Ushio. Ushio attempts to crush Jiro by filling her arm with water to maximize impact, and the strike creates a hole in the ground, but Jiro manages to block most of the damage. Ushio then charges at Jiro again, but instead of attacking, she hands him a business card and introduces herself as a water master. She has just realized that Jiro is a poison master, and she would rather not fight another master because the losses incurred in trying to beat him would be too great. So she asks if he would be willing to walk away if she offers to pay 10 times what Himekawa's crew paid. Meanwhile, on the upper floor, Kinosaki notices the syringe the hero used still has some liquid in it, and he is considering using it on himself so he can help Jiro fight. But Jiro yells at him not to touch it because it's not an enhancement drug, it's deadly poison. Each assassin family has a genetic trait that they pass down from generation to generation, and in Jiro's family, it's the ability to greatly increase their physical attributes when they have deadly poison flowing through their veins. Genetic traits like that are also the reason Ushio is able to control water so freely in combat. Regarding the deal she offered a moment ago, Jiro turns her down, and she is disappointed to hear that because she knows fighting him is going to be expensive, but she has no choice. She launches a water blast at him, but Jiro manages to dodge because his abilities grow stronger the closer he is to death, though taking one of those blasts head-on would be a death sentence. So he needs to avoid getting hit. Ushio doesn't understand why Jiro is putting so much effort into this mission when he has nothing to gain from it, and she starts to wonder if Jiro and Himekawa might be romantically involved in some way, but Jiro doesn't respond. He manages to use a needle to scratch Ushio's suit, and at first, she isn't too concerned about it, but then the scratch bursts into flames because the needle was laced with a highly potent acid. Jiro then takes advantage of the opportunity to strike Ushio multiple times in the faceplate until it cracks, and as he does this, he explains that while Himekawa may be a stranger to him right now, she might become someone special to him in the future, so he's going to do everything he can to save her. Jiro's life has been anything but normal in terms of socialization, but as part of his training, he was taught about the various ways ordinary people live their lives through a series of hidden cameras placed in the rooms of several families all across Japan. This massive invasion of privacy was done so he would understand that ordinary people live meaningless, trivial lives devoid of any higher purpose, so he wouldn't hesitate when it came time to kill them. However, that trivial life of sitting down for breakfast with a family that cares about you is exactly what Jiro wants, and he will do anything to get it, even if it's the death of him. Ushio laughs in Jiro's face and tells him that if the future head of the Poison Clan is saying something so idiotic, then the clan is never going to last. And to ensure Jiro's defeat, Ushio decides to use her trump card, her modified Bloodline Plus, Hell's Lashes. It allows her to create a huge torrent of water that acts as razor-sharp whips, and a single lash from one of these is enough to rip through flesh and bone, so Jiro is once again on the back foot of the fight. Just to tick Jiro off, she intentionally targets Himekawa and Kinosaki mid-fight, causing Kinosaki to suffer a slash on his back when he pushes Himekawa out of the way. Ushio then sarcastically apologizes to Jiro for hurting an innocent bystander and says she will be sure to compensate him for the damages, but that's only if he can survive. Meanwhile, up top, Himekawa rushes over to check on Kinosaki, and seeing the state he's in, she asks why he and Jiro are going to such great lengths for her sake. Kinosaki tells her that for one, it is their job to save her, but to Jiro, this is much more important than she could ever imagine, which is why he is trying so hard to keep her safe. Himekawa asks why Jiro would go so far for her, but Kinosaki doesn't answer that question and instead tells Himekawa to get out of here while she still has the chance because Ushio might target her again if she gets the chance. However, Himekawa refuses to abandon the people who came to save her life, so she asks Kinosaki if there's anything she can do to help, and just then, the two of them happen to notice Jiro's remaining poison in the needle. Jiro gets stronger the more poison there is in his system, so normally, he'd be able to win this fight easily by simply injecting himself with more, but the entire supply of needles he keeps on him was crushed when Ushio slammed him through the ground. With the limited amount he already injected himself with, he's not fast enough to get close to Ushio without getting slashed to pieces. He still has his own modified Bloodline trump card, but from a young age, he was taught that he should be very careful about using his modified Bloodline in battle because a trump card only works when no one knows what it does other than you. For that reason, he was told that if he was ever in a fight against another master, and he is forced to use his trump card, then he needs to kill that master no matter what. Ushio was likely taught the same thing, so she is definitely going to kill Jiro the second she gets the chance, and that doesn't leave him with many options other than to activate his own trump card. But fortunately for Jiro, just then, Himekawa jumped down from the upper floor and landed right on top of him with a special package. Jiro immediately starts freaking out because he has never been in such close contact with a girl before, so he asks her what she's doing. And Himekawa explains that she couldn't just throw this down because Ushio would have destroyed it the second she realized what it was. Jiro still doesn't understand why she chose to come back when she's Ushio's target, but while Himekawa does appreciate Jiro trying to save her, she's not the type to just stand idly by while someone else risks their life for her sake. As expected, Ushio immediately grabs Himekawa and mocks her for doing something as dumb as coming back when she can't fight, but what she failed to realize was that Himekawa was just a distraction to buy Jiro enough time to use his remaining poison. Ushio panics the second she sees the syringe in Jiro's hand and orders him to drop it if he doesn't want her to pop Himekawa's head right now. But Jiro has already completely emptied the syringe, and now that he has a full dose of poison in his system, he is much faster than he was before. So fast, in fact, that he easily perception blitzes Ushio, and before she knows it, he has already stabbed her neck with a tiny dose of that same poison. For him, it works as an enhancer, but for someone without poison resistance like Ushio, it causes her body and organs to go into immediate shutdown, so she loses control of her powers and her suit explodes shortly thereafter. After that, Jiro picks the now unconscious Himekawa up to carry her to safety, but he then realizes that his hand is touching her chest, so he starts freaking out again and asks Kinosaki what he should do. Meanwhile, Ushio is currently in the middle of a torturous hallucination, where she feels like her body is actively being burnt to ash, but eventually, Jiro administers an antidote to snap her out of it. Not only that, he recalls reading that the Water Clan bloodline has a hereditary condition where they are allergic to regular air, which is why they wear suits like these and cover most of their body in water all the time. So since he broke her suit, Jiro made her a cream to help manage her allergic reactions until she can get a new suit made. Ushio doesn't understand why Jiro would do all this and asks if this is his way of showing pity, but Jiro says he is simply putting her in her place. Because now that he has beaten her and treated her, she will know better than to mess with him later. After all, it wouldn't be worth the investment, and Yushio has nothing to say to that. Next, Jiro turns to deal with the captain, and the captain is absolutely terrified because he doesn't want to suffer another dose of torturous poison, so he apologizes and says he will never do it again. And Kinosaki tells him that his legally acquired art collection is fine the way it is, so he should just stick to that and stop stealing art from innocent people. Otherwise, there will be severe consequences. Ushio can't believe Jiro really intends to let the captain go with the equivalent of a slap on the wrist instead of killing him after everything that has happened. But Jiro explains that if the captain ever does go back to stealing art, then he's going to be hit with Jiro's 1,000-year torment poison, and that is arguably a fate worse than death, so he should be smart enough to stay out of trouble. He asks Himekawa if she's okay with it, and she says there's no problem because she doesn't intend to let herself get caught ever again. And on that note, she asks Jiro and Kinosaki if they'd like a ride back to the mainland. They both agree, but they later find out that the ride Himekawa was talking about was her pet shark, and being forced to hang onto a shark's fin for dear life in the middle of the ocean isn't very fun. Sometime later, Himekawa manages to successfully return the painting to its rightful owners, and the little girl is overjoyed to have her mother's painting back. The rest of Himekawa's team is also extremely happy to see the painting reunited with its rightful owners, but while they are all cheering, Jiro stands off to the side because he'd rather not draw too much attention to himself. Aja puts the painting back up in its spot, and her father explains that his wife passed away in a traffic accident a few years after Aja was born, so this is all they have left of her. They could have sold the painting to earn enough money to live in a nicer house and live a carefree life, but to them, it holds too much sentimental value for them to just give it up. Just then, Himekawa calls Jiro by name and tells him to get on camera because Aja would like to thank him personally. Jiro tries to turn her down since he thinks it would be awkward, but Kinosaki tells him to just go with it since he deserves a little praise after everything he's done. Jiro steps up and Aja tells him she's really grateful that he saved her mom's painting, and Himekawa also thanks him as well, because when she heard he was a master, she thought he was going to be one of those cold-hearted people who couldn't spare a second thought for people or things they view as beneath them, but she has realized that Jiro is different from the rest. And while everyone is thanking Jiro anyway, Kinosaki adds her gratitude as well because it's all thanks to Jiro agreeing to pay for her brother's medical bills that he's recovering so well. Jiro has never had this many people thank him all at once, and it's a little overwhelming. So he's about to step out to take a break, but before he does, Himekawa gets his attention and says she actually wants to talk about Jiro's reward before he leaves. Even if they all sold their organs, it wouldn't be enough to cover what Jiro did for them, and they don't have the money to pay him. So Himekawa offers to do anything he wants in order to repay him, and Jiro really wasn't prepared for that kind of offer. Kinosaki ends up setting Jiro up on a date with Himekawa under the guise of a celebration for the mission's success, and it's the perfect setup because after Jiro saved her, Himekawa's attraction towards him must be through the roof, so this is the perfect time for him to tell her how he feels. But unfortunately, Jiro can barely string 2 sentences together right now because he's so nervous about being out on a date. Kinosaki is watching from a distance, but this is exactly why Kinosaki gave him all those conversation lessons. One such lesson is that when you've got nothing to say, a good conversation starter is to compliment something she's wearing, and right now, Himekawa is wearing a bunch of interesting things Jiro could compliment, so this shouldn't be hard for him. Jiro remembers Kinosaki's lessons and zeroes in on the necklace Himekawa is wearing, but his compliments need a little work because the first thing he says is that the necklace looks old and worn out. That is a terrible way to start a conversation since it could offend Himekawa if the necklace is important to her. But fortunately, it was just a random trinket she got at a flea market, so she doesn't really mind. There are many ways he could continue the conversation from here, but Jiro can't think of a single thing to say, and most people would have gotten bored or tagged Jiro as a weirdo by now. But Himekawa is really laid back, so it doesn't really bother her. Jiro may be fine for now, but it's only a matter of time before he messes it up, so Kinosaki decides to give him a helping hand and connects to the monitor behind Himekawa to display helpful messages to Jiro. The manager of the restaurant comes over and tries to tell her to stop since the monitor isn't for customers to use, but Kinosaki puts on her puppy dog eyes, and the manager is instantly charmed. Meanwhile, Himekawa notices that Jiro hasn't eaten anything yet, so she asks him if something is wrong, and he explains that as a poison master, he was trained to never eat anything that he didn't personally make on his own, so he always ate alone, and now it's second nature to him. So it's hard to bring himself to take a bite of food at a restaurant. Himekawa kind of understands how Jiro feels since when she was growing up, she was alone most of the time as well. She grew up in an orphanage and was by herself most of the time. But one day, she was adopted by a really rich old man nearing the end of his life. Not because she was special or anything, and not because the old man had any ill intentions either. He just didn't have any children of his own and wanted to leave his fortune to someone. After the man died, Himekawa inherited his vast fortune and family estate. But while she was looking around, she came across a room filled with priceless pieces of art that the old man had stolen from all across the world. She couldn't stand the idea of inheriting something that rightfully belonged to others, so she set to work tracking down all the original owners and returning their paintings to them. However, doing that was really expensive, so she's pretty much broke now. A lot of people mock her for making such an idiotic decision, but Jiro actually thinks Himekawa is the coolest person he has met in a long time. Today was the first time Jiro ever received such genuine thanks because he helped someone. But Himekawa has been doing the same thing for ages, so she must have helped a ton of people. Himekawa is moved to tears because this is the first time someone other than her friends has praised her for her efforts, and Kinosaki thinks this is the perfect timing. So she sends a message telling Gero to ask her out now. After seeing that, Gero gets up and tells Himekawa that he has a favor he would like to ask of her. Himekawa begins blushing because she can see where this is going, but to her surprise, Gero only asks her to become his friend. She laughs a little and says she could have sworn Gero was going to ask her out, and Gero admits that he would like to do that, but right now, he doesn't know anything about Himekawa, and more importantly, Himekawa doesn't know anything about him. He may have made a good first impression, but there are still a lot of dark sides to him that he hasn't addressed yet. So he wants to start out as friends so they can get to know each other properly before he asks her out. Himekawa is open to the idea and agrees to become friends with Gero, even suggesting that they should hang out again sometime soon, but as soon as she's gone. Kinosaki tells Gero that he's got another potential love interest lined up for him, the only daughter of a billionaire in need of a bodyguard.